Okay, so in this video, we're going to go through a lumbar spine objective examination so you can be more confident with patients when they come in with back pain. Obviously, a good subjective examination is massively important. I've said this before in all my objective examination videos. So head over to my subjective examination video, which has absolutely everything you might find with a patient and loads of questions that you would ask them to kind of guide you in your subjective exam. But now we're going to move on and do our objective exam. First things first, we're going to look at the observation or the inspection of the patient. So if you relax your arms by your side. So we're literally, first of all, just going to have a look at that lumbar spine. We're going to look at the paraspinals. We're going to look at whether there's any lumps, any bumps, any changes in color, any changes in appearance, any change, particularly with the spine. You're always going to be looking at whether there's any scoliosis, so any deviation of the spine. You're going to be looking at whether there's an increased lordosis in the spine and kyphosis. So basically, spinal position, you're going to be looking at the muscle bulk around there, looking at glutes in terms of the muscle bulk, any atrophy, could there be any nerve issues? Is the person obviously weight bearing one side or the other? Whether the shoulders look fairly equal, so whether you can look at the gaps in the arms for this sort of thing, and also whether the arms are rotated inwardly or outwardly. So basically just a general scan to just see, is there anything obvious that's outside of the normal range of what you would expect? Okay, so then we can look at our active range of motion. So let's look at flexion first. So let's have a look, Shah. We're just talking about this, it might be an interesting one. So let's have a look at touching your toes as far as you feel able to go. Well, not bad. And then back up again. So we're looking really at how the spine moves with this. So whether there's any hinging at the hips. So we're looking at strategies, not just is there pain when they're doing it, but strategies of how they're doing it. Are they hinging at their hips? Are they really flexing the spine? What are they doing? And could that be something that could feed into the pathology or the condition that we're dealing with? Then what we're going to do is go hands on your hip, Sean. So like, yep, perfect. And then just extending backwards towards me. Okay, I'm going to be here with my hand. I'm not going to stop you, but you go to where you feel you can and then come back up when you've got to your limit. That's good. So again, we're looking at where they're hinging in their lumbar spine. And then what I also always do is I have my hand there. We don't want them to fall backwards, obviously, but I'm not stopping Shah from moving. I'm just guiding that movement, allowing her to do the movement, but being there to make sure that she feels safe and she feels she's not going to fall over. Next one, if you go hands by your side, palms flat on the sides of your legs, and then we're going to side bend to this way, so you're sliding that right hand down your right leg as far as you feel happy, and then back up. So we're looking at approximately where the fingertips reach in terms of down that leg so that we can compare to the other side, and then you can put that in your notes as well. Same thing on the other side. And back up. Obviously, with all of these, we're asking the patient throughout all of these movements, just let me know whether there feels like there's any of your symptoms or anything that feels abnormal when you're doing these sorts of things. Obviously, if someone feels stretching or pain, we want to know, is it the pain they feel at the moment, or is it just a stretching feeling, which a lot of these tests are obviously going to elicit some form of feeling of stretch or feeling that something is tight. But we want to know, is that feeling, or is it a feeling of the pain that they get? In this position, we can also have a quick look at thoracic spine. So Shah, if you go arms across your chest onto the opposite shoulders, and then what you're going to do is go feet together. And then I'm going to block your hips, and I want you to turn to the left as far as you feel able to go. And back to the middle. And then the same thing to your right, as far as you can go. And back to the middle. So by blocking the pelvis, we're making the movement happen from higher up the spine. I do also like to just have a look at this in more of a global way. So again, if we turn now, same position, just turn to the left, but turn everything. But keep your feet where they are. And I'm looking at where the shoulders finish, and then back to the middle, and then the same thing to your right. And back to the middle. So again, just gives you an overall view. This isn't just going to be thoracic, you're going to be getting lumbar, hips, all sorts of areas are going to be helping rotate doing that, but it just gives you an overall view of what's going on from a rotational perspective. The other really quick thing I like to do with lumbar spine patients is just very quickly assess hip range of motion. So if we relax the leg down, Shah. So we're going to go hip flexion, so just bringing the knee up towards the chest as high as we can go. We're going to go lateral rotation, so just going to bring the foot across, Shah, towards you. You tell me when we get to your limit. About there-ish, yep. And then internal rotation, so bringing the foot outwards. That's good, Perfect. And while we're here, just nice to have a little look at hamstrings, which we know are maybe a bit tight, which are, and then back down. That's good. So we just had a really quick look at the hip. Obviously, the hip can be massively influential in terms of back pain. So we want to rule out things like osteoarthritis of the hip. If someone's got really good range of their hip and there's no pain doing that, then it's unlikely to be a hip pathology. Now, you can often get lack of range of motion in the hip with back pain if it's very acute, because you're obviously moving the lumbar spine when you do that. But again, what I would be asking is, where's the pain? And if the pain is all in the back when you're moving that hip, then it's less likely to be a hip pathology. Doesn't mean it can't be, but it's less likely. If they're saying, oh, it's in the groin, it's in this area, then, or groin, glute, kind of, you know, in that pelvic region, then you might be thinking, okay, this could still be back, but it could also be a hip pathology that's feeding into a back pathology. So a really nice flexibility test that we can do for the back as well is the Thomas test. So Charlotte, what I'm going to get you to do is bring your knee into your chest and then lie back down and lie all the way down onto the plinth. There's a pillow behind you. That's it. So knee to your chest so that does your lower back feel flat? Yep. Yep. And then this leg, I want you to completely relax. So just let it kind of flop down for me. And what we're looking for is whether this leg, the leg that's down, raises or stays raised off the plinth. Okay. In Char's case, it does a little bit, which makes me think if I do that, it's going to feel stretchy, kind of around this area, or around the hip flexor. Where do you feel the stretch? Glute on the other side. Yeah. That's fine. Okay. So this is a classic example of where you're either going to feel stretch in the right side, so rec fem and hip flexors, or in the glutes on the other side. So again, you always want to ask where someone feels their stretch. If we bend that knee in as well, so flexing the knee, feel stretchy through the thigh.
Thigh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So again, we're looking for how much does this leg kick out. The other thing you can look for as well is with people with particularly tight lateral structures like ITB syndrome, etc., you might find their knee falls out to the side, and actually by pushing back to the midline, they feel there's tightness in that side as well. So it's a very quick test that you can do to just check a lot of the flexibility through hip flexors, through the rec fem, and obviously on the glutes on the other side. Next thing we can test is neurological testing. So if someone was having any neurological signs or symptoms, you can do a very quick test of this. So again, you can use a bit of tissue. I often as well just use my hands. If I'm in clinic, I'm doing this really, really quick. Obviously, if you really did feel there was something neurological going on and there was any discrepancy, you could do light touch. You can also do sharp or blunt, and you can do hot or cold in all the dermatomal patterns. But again, for the purposes of the video, I'm going to go through quickly what I would often do in clinic. So Shah, does it feel the same both sides? Yep. Does it feel the same both sides?
Yeah.
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 Same both sides?
Yes.
And same both sides.
Yeah.
I'm just going through my dermatomes. I'm just lightly brushing with my hands. I always say to patients as well, does it feel significantly different? Okay, so it's not about whether it feels a tiny bit different, it's whether it feels significantly different, and that would indicate there was something maybe going on. You could then look at that in more detail. Then we're going to go through a quick myotomes. So if we bring the hip up into hip flexion, can you hold there, Shah, for me? Don't let me bring you down. Hip flexion, then knee extension, hold the shin there for me, don't let me push you down, good. Then knee flexion, hold there, don't let me push you up, good. Relaxing all the way down, so dorsiflexion next, so bring the ankle up towards you, hold there, don't let me push you down, good. Big toe up towards you, and then don't let me push the big toe down, good, perfect. I could also do S1 with a single leg calf raise, which I might do in with my functional test later on. Then I would do a little bit of reflex testing, so again, for this one, just test the knee jerk first, so nice and relaxed with the leg. We're looking at the knee jerk, then just bringing the ankle across, relaxing it onto the leg, and then just doing that ankle jerk on that side as well. And all these you're going to be comparing side versus side. And that's essentially a very quick neurological examination that you can do on the lower leg just to rule out neurological condition. Muscle strength wise, we've already been through a lot of muscle strength in terms of our neurological testing with regards to frank neuro, so really huge levels of weakness that would indicate some sort of nerve pathology. But I also like to do a few just simple strength tests with someone, looking at their glute max and looking at hip extension, and then also looking at things like the abdominals, which we'll do in a second. So first one, simple prone leg lifts. Okay, nice basic exercise. So Shah, if you can keep your knee straight on the left and just lift up for me as high as you feel able to go. Hold there and don't let me push you down. And relax. It's good. And we would check that on the other side. Then what we could do is bend the knee to 90 degrees and then ask you to do the same thing, Shah. So you can lift that leg up, hold it there, don't let me push you down. 2, 1, and relax. It's good. And then we'd be comparing from left side to right side, whether there's any strength deficits on that side. Another simple exercise you can do to strength test the kind of hamstrings and glutes would be a single leg bridge. So Shah, if you come onto your back for me, and then feet flat, one leg towards your chest or one leg up, that's it, arms by your side, and then just literally lift your hips up in the air and back down again. With this one, you might want to teach as well pelvic tilting, because we know that posteriorly tilting the pelvis will be much more comfortable most of the time for people with back pain. So if someone's got back pain and they're bridging and they're saying, oh God, it feels really painful in my back, check how they're doing it, because if you get that posterior tilt before you do the movement, often there's no back pain, but it feels much more work through the hamstrings and the glutes. So again, we would check both sides of this. Then we can check the abdominals. So if we hold the feet and say, Shah, can you come across your chest with the arms, and can you lift yourself all the way up so your elbows touch your knees? Yep. And then can you go slowly on the way down? It's good. So one way to check the abdominals, again, we could do multiple reps of that if we wanted to. The other way to check the abs from more of a leg perspective would be arms by your side, Shah. We're going to lift the legs to 90 degrees. Can you make sure your back stays flat to the ground? And then what you're going to do is lower one leg towards the floor, under control. Just before you reach the floor, come back up to the top. And then you can do that same thing on the left-hand side. Again, we could do multiple reps of this. And what you could do as well, and what I'll often do, is actually bring my hand underneath the small of the back, so I can feel whether there is an extension of that spine going on as they reach those lower movements. So I would say, come back down, Shah. As soon as you feel that back going into extending or arching, you come back up again. And again, it's how well that person can control their lumbar spine doing those movements. Another very quick, and then relax the legs down, way to just assess the abdominals in this position. Okay, so when we're looking at our accessory movements for our back, we're going to obviously use our thumbs or a hypothenar eminence for this. What you're going to do is come to the pelvis. We know that from pelvis, if we come across from the pelvis, the spinous process that we can feel is L4. So we can go from that point and we can go with the palm of the hand onto L4. We can then feel up the spine, relevant levels. And I'm just pressing on the spinous process. I'm feeling whether that it feels stiff, but also what the patient reports. And then I can also go to the side of the spine, so feeling the facets, and I'm just using my thumbs, I'm going up each level. I'd be asking the patient whether it feels sore, whether it feels different left to right, or whether it feels similar. And then you can just palpate through the spine. Again, from that position, it's very easy then to just palpate through the paraspinal muscles into QL. So we're just having a feel through those soft tissues of the back. You can then feel into the upper glutes, so just feeling into upper glutes, piriformis, and across into the hips as well. So the greater trochanter is another area where we would want to assess. So just basically palpating the muscle tissue in the back, the facet joints, the spinous processes, the glutes, get an overall view of how that feels for the patient. So special test wise, we've got a few that we can do. A simple straight leg raise is going to be a good special test, just generally for the disc issues, and a cross leg special straight leg raise as well. So we're just looking for whether that causes any symptoms, leg and back. We can also do a Faber's test, just look at the hip. So flexion, abduction, external rotation. We're just looking at whether there's any issues through the SRJ particularly, but also just generally if it's painful or not, and general range of motion. Obviously, we would assess that on both sides. We can go through our Laslett test as well. So I'll put a link on the video now to have a look at the Laslett test. That's going to be for your SOJ, or to rule out SIJ pathology. We can also do an active straight leg raise test. So for this one, Shah, if you keep the knee straight and just lift that leg off the bed for me to here and hold, 3, 2, 1, and back down again. That's good. Foot in this position, can you keep the knee really straight, locked out for me, and I only want you to lift for a foot. Now hold, 3, 2, 1, and back down again. Good. And then we would check that the other side. Again, you can also look for whether there's any abdominal doming, whether there's any shift in the pelvis. So we're looking not just at whether it causes pain, but the quality of that movement. From a greater trochanteric pain syndrome perspective, obviously we can palpate through those greater trochanter. So we're just feeling for pain on palpation. Then we can do an external rotation or derotation test. So Shah, from there, can you hold, don't let me push you across? Good. Can you hold there, don't let me push you across? Good. So we're rotating externally, and we're pushing against that, and we're seeing whether that creates any pain around the greater trochanter area. Then we can do just an abduction test. So hold there, Shah, and don't let me push you across. It's good. We can do that in a position down here. Hold there, don't let me push you across. So I'm pushing into adduction. Shah's having to push into abduction, and then if it's painful around that area. Also can very quickly do a stance test, so standing on one leg. If they stand on one leg for 30 seconds, no pain, that would be a negative test. If they get pain on their stance leg, so if the pain was on the right hand side and they were standing on their right leg, they were feeling pain through that area. If you've got a stance test that's painful derotation and resisted abduction, and pain on palpation, you're pretty much dealing with GTPS. So again, this is a condition that if someone's kind of getting that hip, back area, and often they're conjoined conditions, so you get back pain and GTPS. So you just want to make sure that we're dealing with both those things if they've got it, and those are really quick tests you can do to test for that. So for a very quick quadrant test, and this would be for facet joint pathologies, if you've got arms across your chest onto the opposite shoulder shaft for me, and then what I'm going to do is get you to extend backwards, and then we're going to side bend to your right hand side and back up. That's good. And then this time we're going to side bend to the left, and then we're going to extend backwards towards me and then back up. So what we're doing is we're extending and side bending towards the area of pain. So if the pain was on the left hand side, we'd be extending backwards and then side bending to the left, or you could try side bending to the left first and then extending backwards. Again, obviously this one would only really be relevant if you have tried doing an extension and a side bend. It hasn't been too bad, but it's still very localized pain. So you wouldn't be doing, if you've already established that that facet joint isn't happy being extended or side bent, then you don't necessarily need to do the quadrant because you've already found that that's the case. So the other thing that we can do with lumbar spines is we can look at different differentiation tests when we do bending. So bending is often something that people feel pain in, but what we can do is different knee positions. So if I ask you to bend down forwards towards touching your toe shaft, and then come back up. And this time I want you to do the same thing, but I want you to just allow your knees to bend more at the point where you feel your hamstrings are limiting you. So bend first, and then bend the knees as you can and go all the way down. So now, and come back up again, we're getting a little bit more spinal flexion, but less tightness in those hamstrings. So neurally, you might be thinking, okay, that's going to reduce the neural tension if someone has got a neural tension problem. The other thing we could do is say, actually do different ankle positions. So you could, for example, put a block underneath the feet and then do another bend and see whether that had an impact. So all these sorts of things can change that. Now, the other thing you can do is if you lock the hips out, Shah, so this time what I want you to do is not allow your spine to bend like a waiter bending forwards. It's good. And back up again. So now that's going to put a lot more stress in the hamstring and more stretch, but it's going to put less flexion through the spine. So again, we start to differentiate between different conditions in terms of hip, lower back, neural, all by just modifying and changing what the person might be doing in standing with the bending, and it just gives us lots of little clues and information. So the other classic thing with lumbar spines is that they often say when they get out of a seated position, it feels sore. So we want to look at that, right? So if with a person just literally in this position, Shah, I want you to go arms across your chest and then just stand up for me. and then sit down. That's good. And again. And then back down. Perfect. So we're just looking at generally how they move, whether there's pain. You can ask the person to do single leg versions of these if they're at a high enough level, but that would be someone that probably didn't have a very irritable lower back, because that might be something they would find a problem. And the other thing, if you relax your arm shaft for me, and I just want you to just relax as much as you can. So the other thing you can ask them to do is just sit and just relax, because again, their back might be sore when they're sitting for long periods. So you might want to just have a look at how they're sitting. Now, often, obviously, they're gonna change how they sit based on the fact that you're looking at them, but it's still a good thing to do, and just ask them, okay, does that feel fairly normal to you? If it does, then you can assess and look at their posture while they're doing that. Again, posture is not something I'd be overly obsessed about, but it's something you still do want to take in mind. And again, one of the things you can look for in certain patients, if they've got leg symptoms that just aren't quite fitting and making sense, is potentially vascular conditions. So again, with vascular conditions, we're going to look at generally how the legs look in terms of whether the coloration looks the same, whether there's any change in the skin quality, whether there's any change in the veins, etc. in that leg. What we can then also do is capillary refill. So we would just squeeze the nail bed and we would then relax, and we're looking for that colour to come back into the nail bed within 2 seconds. We can also then do pulses. So we can look at different pulses of the foot. You can look at the dorsalis pedis pulse in the foot itself. So if we flex the big toe shaft towards me, so you can see the flexor hallucis longus tendon, and if you come in from there and relax into the midfoot region, you'll then feel that pulse, which I can feel now. You can check the popliteal pulse, and you can check other pulses as well. But again, I've done a vascular video, which I'll link on the screen, and that has more of extensive tests. So capillary refill, generally looking at the limb to look at whether there's any changes in kind of what you'd expect with a vascular type patient. Pulses, and then also blood pressure. So we can look at general blood pressure of the person just to see whether that was something that was of concern. And there you have it, quick lumbar spine assessment. As I said at the start of the video, there's loads of other things you can go through with the lumbar spine, but this gives you a really basic, quick framework that you can use. If you enjoyed this one, then subscribe to the channel and like the video. You'll be notified loads of other physio videos that we've got coming out on the channel going forwards. And if you want to improve your assessment skills, then check out this video here on the screen. I know you're going to love it if you love this one.